Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is honestly absolutely essential, but man, it is incredibly difficult for so many of us. We're talking about mastering emotional regulation and relational maturity, specifically during stressful conflicts. We're going to break down exactly how you can take control of your nervous system when arguments get heated. That way, you can stop reacting from this place of sheer panic and actually start responding with real intentionality and care.
So, have you ever wondered why you can be highly functional, super careful with your language, and completely put together at work, but the second you get into an argument at home, you just feel totally unregulated? Like, out of nowhere, you're ultra defensive, you're completely shutting down, or maybe even lashing out. It's a wildly frustrating experience, right? Feeling like this totally competent adult in one room and then a frightened, fighting child in the next. But believe it or not, there is a very real neurological reason for this whole shebang.
To unpack all of that, here is our roadmap for today. First, when your brain gets hijacked. Second, meet your protective self. Third, the rule of remembering love. Then we'll look at your relational toolkit. And finally, building new automatic habits.
All right, let's jump right into section 1. When your brain gets hijacked. We're looking at the neuroscience of relationship conflict. You see, understanding how our nervous system literally changes our reality under stress, well, that's the absolute first step to changing our behavior. And it all kicks off with this concept called state-dependent memory. So often, we just assume couples in conflict are, communicating poorly. But the reality goes way deeper than that. When you're activated, meaning you're stressed, you're angry, or you're feeling threatened, your brain's entire processing system just completely flips. Your nervous system alters what you notice, what you remember, and even what you assume. The version of the story you believe when you're calm might be completely different from the version your body believes when it's flooded with stress. You aren't just thinking differently here, you are literally experiencing a completely different reality.
Just look at the stark contrast between these two states. In a calm state, you might look at your partner and see someone who's just tired, maybe a bit overwhelmed, and in need of some grace. But when you shift into an activated state, that exact same partner, doing the exact same things, suddenly appears hostile, selfish, or even unsafe. The facts didn't change at all. Your state changed. And once your nervous system makes that shift into an activated state, it's like your inner courtroom starts admitting terrible, biased evidence just to support this narrative that you are under attack.
Okay, moving on to section 2. Let's meet your protective self. Old survival strategies playing out in the present.
Let's actually meet the parts of ourselves that tend to grab the steering wheel during a fight. There is this massive night and day contrast between who we want to be and who we actually become under stress. So the adult self, that part is regulated, it's rational, it solves problems, but when things start to feel threatening, this younger protective self jumps right in. And let me tell you, it doesn't usually announce itself politely. It shows up as sudden silence, extreme urgency, heavy defensiveness, or just this intense desire to run away and retreat. The absolutely crucial point here is that these harmful reactions, they aren't random. They're actually old childhood survival strategies. It's just your brain trying to solve present-day problems using severely outdated tools. Now, if you're recognizing that younger protective self in your own behavior, I really want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not broken. Seriously. Nobody automatically knows how to stay present when they feel accused, unseen, or ashamed. Most of us grew up in environments where people, they yelled, they shut down, or they walked on eggshells. So struggling with conflict? It isn't a moral failure, not at all. You are simply undertrained in a very specific set of relational muscles. And hey, just like any muscle, these can absolutely be built up with some practice.
Which brings us to section 3, the rule of remembering love. This is the foundational internal move.
This rule is the absolute first thing you must do before you speak, before you ask a question, or even before you withdraw from your partner. But before we define the rule itself, we've got to talk about this really profound quote. Insight is what you know when you're calm. Practice is what you remember when you are activated. Think about it. Reading about communication or having a great realization after an argument, that's insight. That happens when you are perfectly calm. But your brain is highly, highly automatic under stress. You literally cannot wait until an argument is already roaring and just expect your wisest self to stroll into the room wearing a cardigan and carrying a cup of tea, right? You have to practice these tools well before the storm hits, because practice is the only thing you fall back on when you're activated.
And the very first thing you need to practice is just hitting pause to ask yourself one question. What memory state am I in while I feel this? Look, your feelings are real and they are super important data, but they aren't always wise instructions. If you feel this sudden burning impulse to attack, or maybe to just completely disappear, ask yourself if you're reacting from your present-day adult self, or are you actually reliving an old memory of neglect, shame, or feeling powerless? Because if you try to communicate while you're trapped in an old memory state, your partner is only going to hear the panic and the packaging. They won't hear the actual pain underneath it all.
And that is exactly why remember love first is the absolute most vital step. Now, I know it kind of sounds like something straight out of a cheesy greeting card, but here is the crucial point. It is not sentimental. Actually, scratch that, it's a deeply clinical, incredibly practical tool. Before you explain your hurt or start defending yourself, you have to deliberately remind your nervous system that the person standing in front of you is your partner, not your enemy. Recalling your history of care and your shared life literally brings your adult brain back online. It is a real physiological intervention designed to stop the panic in its tracks.
All right, Section 4, your relational toolkit. This is all about shifting from reactive to mature.
So now that we know how to intervene internally, let's dive into the highly practical tools that give you the exact techniques to shift from a reactive state into a mature one. This 4-step sequence is about to become your new best friend before any difficult conversation. First up, pause. Seriously, do not let that very first automatic sentence leave your mouth. Second, locate your state. Just take a second to ask yourself if you're operating from adult wisdom or if you're stuck in fight or flight mode. Third, remember love. Consciously recall that you are aiming for connection here, not victory. And only then do you move to step 4, which is speak. Following this sequence guarantees your automatic wounded self isn't the one driving the interaction.
Just look at exactly how a sentence changes when it comes after remembering love versus before it. For example, the automatic reaction, "you always disappear," is, well, it's an indictment. But when you pause and you remember love, it becomes a much more mature response. "I'm feeling lonely and I really want closeness." Or take the automatic, "nothing I do is ever enough." That transforms into a vulnerable request to be seen, like, "I want to hear you, but I need to know you see I'm trying." You are literally changing your language from a stance of defense to a stance of connection. It's a total game changer.
Now, part of that toolkit also includes knowing when it's time to just stop. Taking a break during a fight is completely legitimate, for sure, but it has to be what we call a responsible timeout. See, if you just go silent or walk away, it sets off massive abandonment alarms for your partner. Instead, try stating that you're at capacity, promise them that you are not leaving the relationship, and, this is the magic part right here, give them a specific return time. Say something like, "Look, I need 15 minutes to reset, but I promise I'll be back at 7:30 to listen." I promise you, doing that completely changes the dynamic of the argument. Another incredible tool in your arsenal is what we call short burst attunements. Basically, these are just micro moments of connection. Things like, "Wow, you've had a really long day," or "Come here, let me hug you," or even just, "Thank you so much for trying." These act as tiny emotional stitches. We so often think we need these massive, exhausting, multi-hour processing conversations to heal a rift, but we really don't. These small signals simply tell the other person, "I see you and you matter," and that prevents the wound from staying open in the first place.
Finally, rounding out your toolkit is the concept of checking your work. Asking things like, "Did that feel supportive?" Or, "Did you feel appreciated just now?" Now, I know that might feel a little basic, almost too simple, but it is incredibly powerful. When couples get stuck, their brains just default to expecting the absolute worst from each other. By checking your work, you are literally forcing your partner's brain to stop operating on autopilot, to actually take in new positive evidence in the present moment, and to update its old negative story.
Okay, let's head into our final section, Section 5, Building New Automatic Habits. We're talking about the power of repetition. So all of these tools, they really only work if we weave them into the everyday fabric of our lives, until they just become second nature. But we need to set some realistic expectations here. The goal of all of this is absolutely not perfection. You are still going to get stressed. You are definitely still going to get activated. But over time, through many, many small repetitions, one softer tone, one responsible pause, one extra hug, you're going to notice that activation so much sooner. You'll be able to protect the relationship faster. And eventually, leading with your adult self won't feel like this massive, exhausting effort anymore. It's going to become your brand new home base. So, I want to leave you with this. The next time you feel that tension rising and you know an argument is brewing, just take a breath and ask yourself, who is actually driving your relationship right now? Is it your wounded past, desperately trying to protect you with outdated tools? Or is it your loving present, leading with your mature adult self? Because at the end of the day, the choice is entirely yours.